Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1422B, and today's date is November 10th, 2017, and the title of the episode is, The Event is Moving Forward. Is the Cabal ready to pull the trigger? Let's get into the economic collapse, political, and geopolitical news. Now, we can see the investigation into the Podestas. Well, that is starting to heat up, and we understand that Tony Podesta, he decided to leave his firm, and we understand that others in the firm now are also leaving. Podesta's group longtime CEO, Kimberly Fritz, is leaving the firm. Of course, she's saying that she's going to go off and start her own type of firm, but what they're doing right now is they're jumping ship. And the reason they're jumping ship is because there are investigations going on right now looking into the dealings of them working with Ukraine, with them funding Fusion GPS, and everything else that they've been doing. All of this is going to start coming out. Now, of course, what I've been saying is that they need to distract everyone from all of this, and it looks like this is what they are starting to do. And I'm talking about the Cabal, and we've been talking about events that will be occurring, and they're trying to get them off the ground right now. We see out in Venezuela, we understand that they've defaulted. The U.S. government is pushing more and exerting more pressure on Venezuela. They have imposed sanctions on 10 Venezuelan government officials over the election. The U.S. Department of Treasury says that we do not recognize the election in Venezuela. And we see right now that they're doing and pushing their agenda as hard as they possibly can because they're running out of time right now. And yes, there are still individuals within government that are non-elected, that they're working for the Cabal. They're already there in the intelligent organizations, the NSA, the CIA, FBI, you name it, they are still there. The corporate media is still taking instructions from the intelligence community. They're still working with the Cabal. They're putting out story after story, and many of them are turning out to be completely fake, phony, and false. For one, they were saying that the U.S. is ready to supply Kiev with weapons because we can see right now, and we understand that McCain was out in Kiev saying this is the year of the offensive, and they really thought to themselves back in that time period that there was going to be a war going on where they were going to recapture the southeastern location of Ukraine and even go into Crimea. So they came out with the story that the U.S. is now supplying weapons to Ukraine, and the White House came out and said, no, this U.S. media report is completely fake, phony, and false. And we're seeing a lot of this where they're trying to put out these stories and make people think certain things, and they're turning out to be not true whatsoever. We see Duterte has met Putin in Vietnam, and he thanked Putin for helping in getting rid of the Islamic State. Duterte, instead of getting weapons from the United States, he actually moved away from the United States when Obama was president and moved towards Russia and actually moved towards China, where they made a deal where the Philippines was able to sail their ships in the South China Sea with absolutely no problem, and China's warships were able to dock in the Philippines. And Duterte met Putin out in Vietnam and thanked him for the weapons, thanked him for helping to get rid of the Islamic State. And we see that the deep state, the Cabal, they're doing whatever they possibly can to stop Trump from meeting Putin in Vietnam. I mean, they have put out stories that they're not going to meet. They have no time for this. But guess what? Putin and Trump, they met in Vietnam. They shook hands, and they said that they weren't going to meet because of scheduling conflicts. I mean, they made up every excuse in the book because they don't want these two to talk to each other. They don't want the world seeing the United States president and the president of Russia actually meeting, shaking hands, because Russia is supposed to be the enemy. And once again, Trump really wanted to work with Putin. And I think behind the scenes, and as we can see, this is what they've really been doing. They've been working with each other behind the scenes out in North Korea, in Syria, in Afghanistan, and many other areas to calm everything down. But the Cabal doesn't want everything calmed down. We see that Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, they asked their citizens to leave Lebanon. We see that Israel and many other nations are pushing a war with Lebanon, Syria, and Iran. And the U.S. is, yes, involved in this. And the U.S. Air Force came out and said, yes, that ballistic missile that was fired by the Yemeni rebels that targeted the Saudi capital, yes, it was from Iran. It bore the Iranian markings. We see the components. They were from Iran. Now, once again, that doesn't mean Iran fired the missile. The United States sells their missiles to many, many different nations. The Islamic State was using weapons from the United States. Al-Qaeda has been using weapons from Russia and the United States. Where did they get this from? Well, you can get this stuff on the black market. And just because a missile was fired, and again, allegedly fired at the Saudi capital, which makes no sense for the Yemeni people and the Houthis to do because they are too busy fighting the war within their country, we can see that this whole false flag agenda is to get something moving forward. We see French President Emmanuel Macron, he visited Saudi Arabia, and this was a surprise meeting. Now, what's very interesting is that they're laying the groundwork for a war. They're trying to convince through the corporate media is completely on board with this. They're pushing the idea that yes, there's going to be a war. Yes, Iran has declared war and Lebanon has declared war, and this whole thing is going to move forward here. I mean, this is what they're trying to convince everyone of. And Hezbollah, the Hezbollah leader, is saying, yeah, we're not going to go to war here. Not at all. Tillerson is out there, and he warns against using Lebanon for a proxy conflict. And he's warning other countries and groups against using Lebanon as a vehicle for a larger proxy fight in the Middle East, saying the United States strongly backs Lebanon's independence. And again, we need to understand that they need to push this event forward because they have nothing else left. Time is running out. The clock is ticking down. Russia, the United States, they're very close to reaching a final agreement on the Syrian conflict. Now remember, Russia and Syria, they have pushed the Islamic State. Trump has been actually having the Pentagon fight the Islamic State and remove them. The Cabal, on the other hand, has been transporting the Islamic State to different locations. The same thing is happening in Afghanistan. The same thing is happening in Somalia. The United States is actually going after the Cabal's armed forces. That's, if you really think about this, back up for one sec. The Islamic State, Al-Qaeda, this has been the army of the Cabal for a very long time. It's not the army of the United States. It's been their army. The United States now is in there fighting the army of the Cabal, which is the Islamic State, which is Al-Qaeda, which is the moderate rebels. And they used this army to spread across the Middle East. And now it's a mop-up operation where the United States and the armed forces are actually, and this is why Trump gave command to the Pentagon, they actually are going after the Islamic State. But the corporate media, the intelligence agencies, they're broadcasting it as, oh no, we're going to war with all these places. We're bringing in more troops. No, we're bringing in troops to go after the Islamic State and get rid of them once and for all. That is what is happening right now. And we can see that the situation in North Korea is trying to be calmed down because they're meeting behind the scenes. We see that the situation in Syria, well, the Cabal is losing there. They're also losing it in the Middle East. Now they're trying to build something up in Lebanon with Saudi Arabia, Israel, and other nations because they realize they have nothing left at this point. They're even trying stuff in Ukraine because what else do they have? And this is what we're talking about. They are ready to pull the trigger. They're building up the propaganda, and they're going to push some type of an event. Now, what this event is going to be, we discussed it before. It could be a cyber attack. It could be a physical attack here in the United States or in Europe. But we definitely see that they're going to try something in the Middle East area where they're going to say Iran has done something. And I wouldn't be surprised if they show proof of components of missiles or whatever they're going to use to show this is why we need to go into Iran. And you have to remember, going all the way back in time, their plan was to go into Libya, Somalia, Sudan, go into Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, and finally end up in Iran. And it looks like they can't get anywhere with Syria, so they figured if they can get something started with Iran, well, maybe it will flow into Syria and flow back into all the other Middle Eastern countries, and we can have an all-out great war this way. So they are not done. They're still pushing their agenda. It looks like they're ready to pull the trigger because they're running out of time. And we can see right now that Russia and the United States, they're close to reaching a final agreement in Syria. And once this agreement is made, this is going to be even more difficult for the cabal to push their agenda. If there's a peace treaty in North Korea, this is going to pose a huge, huge problem for the cabal. And this is why they're racing against time right now, and they have no other alternative but to push their agenda. And I wouldn't be surprised in the next couple of weeks if we see some type of huge event. And we also have to remember what has been happening here in the United States, where they've been having drills with an amusement park, which is King's Dominion. They've been having drills in all different areas. They've been having the Grid X drill. Wisconsin's having a power grid drill going on, coming up very soon. And we see at this point, the Pentagon is very worried about a cyber attack against the financial institutions. And they've been giving us all these different warnings from all over the place. And we see that they are prepared in every aspect right now. It's just the matter of, can they get this event off the ground? A lot of times their plans don't go the way they want them to go, and they have to regroup and plan something else. But something on this scale, event of all events, I think they have this one really planned out, and they've been planning for a very long time. It's like the Doomsday event, where they will use this as their last option because there's nothing else left for them to do, and they will push the event where you'll see cyber attacks, you'll see physical attacks, and it looks like they're getting to the point where they're going to be that desperate. This is why you need to be ready and prepared, because think about it. We see the economy breaking down all over the place. You know, the Fed cannot keep this system going because they can't control everything. They can manipulate and control certain things, but if everyone starts losing jobs, if everyone can't spend money and retail continually implodes, they tighten up the subprime loaning to automobiles, the whole thing is going to be a disaster. And we're headed in that direction. And it's going to come down. They have to bring it down because they need to start the new system. And they know eventually they would like to control. They don't want a black swan because it's out of their control then. They need to control everything because they have it planned out where they get us into some type of war. Once the war is over, they restart the system. We forget about the old system and how they were responsible for it. And this has been their plan from the beginning. So in the next couple of weeks, we need to keep an eye open because we're going to see this event of all events. It might even start in the Middle East, which it looks like right now, or even North Korea. And these are the two hot spots that we're looking at right now. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.